This watch has unlimited battery life. Seriously. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Dave with Chase the Summit, and today we're going to be taking a close look at the Garmin Instinct Solar. Garmin was nice enough to send this watch out to me for review, but this is not a sponsored video, and I'm allowed to give you my honest, unbiased opinion. The Garmin Instinct Solar launched a couple of weeks ago. I've been running with it ever since then. I've been wearing it day in and day out, going to sleep with it, working with it, living with it on my wrist just to see what it's like in a day-to-day capacity. I've also had the opportunity to put it up against my Garmin Fenix 6 in terms of feature set and GPS accuracy, so we'll be going over that a little later in this video. This is going to be somewhat of a deep dive, so hang in there with me. Let's get into it. The Garmin Instinct Solar is an update to the Garmin Instinct that launched back in 2018. That was a really popular device, and mainly because of the price point coming in at just $200. The Instinct Solar, however, doubles that price point, but there's a lot new here. It's basically an entirely new watch. But doubling the price is a steep move by Garmin, and we're going to find out if it's worth it today. Before we get into it, if you're into these sorts of geeky videos about GPS watches, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. It really helps me out, and you'll stay up to date with all my upcoming videos. And if you found this video helpful or at least entertaining, please hit that thumbs up button. It motivates me to keep making videos like this in the future. The Garmin Instinct Solar has a very tactical and rugged appearance, just like its older counterpart with the Garmin Instinct. Some people love this look, some people hate it. I don't mind it. It's really not that obtrusive, especially in this dark black color. It doesn't stand out too much when it's on your wrist. However, it is a fairly large watch. This is a 45mm diameter watch, and it's about 15mm thick, so it is pretty prominent when it's on your wrist. That said, it weighs only 53 grams, so it's pretty light watch. You really don't feel it too much when it's on your wrist, and I can sleep with it, I can run with it. It really doesn't get in my way, but it's something to keep in mind if you have smaller wrists. The case of the Garmin Instinct Solar is entirely made out of plastic. There's no metal here, even the buttons are plastic. Some people see this as a drawback. I really don't mind it. It means that if you scratch the watch for any reason, it's just gonna be black plastic that shows through rather than a big scratch through the paint on your Garmin Fenix 6 or something like that. So the plastic isn't totally a bad thing. It also lends itself to being a very lightweight watch. The Garmin Instinct Solar also comes with a military spec for shock, water resistance, and thermal. This is pretty rare. I don't know if there's any other watches in the Garmin lineup other than some really unique ones that have a military spec. And it's waterproof to 100 meters, which is great at this price point. The display of the Garmin Instinct Solar is pretty small. It's a little under 1 inch, even though this is a pretty big watch, and there's a reason for that. It means that Garmin was able to cram more solar panels under the glass, and these panels are more efficient than the glass itself. On watches like the Garmin Fenix 6, there's a very thin ring of photovoltaic cell around the perimeter. On the Garmin Instinct Solar, there's a much more of that material, so you get a more efficient solar feature. We'll get into that in a little bit. I'll do some testing later on in this video. The screen is also monochromatic, so it's only black and white. There's no color here. And it kind of reminds me of my original Garmin Fenix from like back in 2010. That had a black and white display. And really, I don't mind it too much. It's very crisp, and you can see this display at multiple angles. I think a lot better than my Garmin Fenix 6. It's really visible in the sunlight. It's great in the dark too with the backlight. However, the backlight is very washed out. It's very bluish, and it looks kind of dated. I don't know if this is just my unit in particular, but it's really not a crisp backlight like I have on my Garmin Fenix 6. The Garmin Instinct Solar has a power glass display, so it is a solar panel. The whole thing is a solar panel, but like I said, only the overlay underneath is the high efficiency part of that panel. The glass itself is like a Corning Gorilla Glass. They don't state that on their website, but I'm assuming it's something like that. So it's scratch resistant, but it's definitely not scratch proof. So you got to be careful with this thing. You could put a screen protector on it, but Garmin doesn't like people doing that because it can affect how efficient the solar panel works. In terms of the design of the hardware, there's a 5-button layout, a lot like what you'd see with the Garmin Fenix 6 or the 945 or any of those watches. And if you come from one of those watches to the Garmin Instinct Solar, you'd be right at home here. The top right is your start stop button. You've got your menu button in the middle here. You've got your backlight button on top, and it's all the same. You know what I'm talking about. Around the back of the device, we have the Garmin Elevate heart rate sensor, which is new for this model. The original Instinct only had the older heart rate monitor that didn't have the SpO2 meter. This time around, we get the oxygen saturation sensor, and we also get the newer heart rate sensor. We'll do some testing on this in a little bit. And then next to that, we've got the proprietary charging port. The Garmin Instinct Solar comes with a included silicone strap, which I thought was really permanently attached and you couldn't change it, but it turns out you can actually use any 22mm quick fit band like the ones I have for my Garmin Fenix 6 here. They will actually fit right on to the bars on the top and bottom of the Instinct Solar, so that's a pretty cool feature. I'll link some of these down in the description if you're interested. I'm going to quickly walk through the user interface so you can get a feel for how it works. Like I said before, if you came from a Garmin watch, you're going to feel right at home here. If you hold the middle button here, You go into your settings, you've got your watch face settings. So the watch does come pre-installed with a whole bunch of various different looking watch faces from analog to digital, and they all look pretty cool. One important thing to note here is that the Garmin Instinct Solar is not compatible with anything from the Connect IQ store. So that means watch faces, data fields, widgets, applications, any of that stuff. That's a pretty big drawback for me because I really like using the Stride Pod when I run to measure my power. And unfortunately, without the Connect IQ app, I can't use that sensor. Moving on, we've got a history of all of our activities. If you click into here, you see your activities, you see my past runs, one from yesterday. Below that, we can dive into our settings. And then you've got activities and apps, widgets, controls, watch face, sensors and accessories. So you can pair an external heart rate sensor, but like I said, you can't pair anything like the Stride Pod to it because it doesn't work with Connect IQ. You've got your phone settings, user profile, activity tracking, navigation, power manager, which is great to see on this watch. This is the same thing that you get on the Garmin Fenix 6, where you can customize your power modes basically to optimize how much power usage you want to have during an activity. This is great for me. I really like using that for ultra marathons. I can turn off the connection on my phone. I can turn off certain features just to preserve a little bit more battery life. We'll talk about battery life in a little bit. You may have noticed a little circular display up in the corner here, and that's a pretty unique thing for the Garmin Instinct series. It's actually a functional little window. You can configure it to whatever you want it to be in your activities and on your watch face. So for instance, right now it's set to be my date. And then when I scroll down through my widgets, you can see that that little overlay actually changes. So right now we're in the solar intensity widget, and that little overlay has a circle that indicates how much solar intensity you're getting at a given moment. Then we've got our oxygen saturation widget here. And like I said before, we've got that new heart rate sensor that can take advantage of this. You've got your current heart rate, and then you can go back and see your average resting heart rate. You've got your My Day widget, which is basically your steps and stairs climbed, activity minutes, and all that stuff. You've got your phone notifications here, so I've got some kudos from Strava. That's good to see. You've got your calendar widget. You've got a weather widget, which is really nice. It kind of mimics what the Garmin Fenix 6 has in the 945, but at a much lower resolution and of course black and white. And then I've got my running widget here, which gives me the totals for the week and all of the data I want to see. Now you can configure these widgets however you want, and you can add and remove them as you please. But like I said before, there is no Connect IQ integration on the Instinct Solar, so you can't go on the Connect IQ website and download new widgets and install extra things. It's really what is installed on the watch, and that's it. In terms of smartwatch functionality on the Garmin Instinct Solar, it's a lot like their other devices. You can read your text messages. You can actually respond to your text messages if you have an Android device only. It doesn't work with iPhone. You can also control the music on your phone from the watch. You get phone notifications, and you also get calendar notifications, which is pretty handy. And you can also answer and decline phone calls as they come in. In terms of what activities you can track with the Garmin Instinct Solar, it's a lot like the other Garmin watches. You can track almost anything. There's a lot of pre-configured activities like running, trail running, all that stuff. And if there's something that you want to do that's not listed here, you can create a custom activity with a custom name, custom data fields, and make your own. When you start an activity, you can put up to 5 data fields per page, which is pretty good for such a small screen. As you can see here, I've got my pace, heart rate, timer, distance field, and elevation gain. And these are all configurable. You can change them to whatever you please. Then you've got special pages like this heart rate zones widget. So even though this watch doesn't have full mapping like the Garmin Fenix 6 or the Garmin 945, there is a lot of powerful navigation tools built into it. Now, for instance, I'm in my run activity right now, and I can navigate down to navigation, and then I can go to courses, and I can hit this Fells Fun Run course that I designed a couple weeks ago and hit do course. Now, one thing I've noticed with the Garmin Instinct Solar, it's kind of lacking CPU power a little bit compared to my other watches like the Fenix 6 and the 945. I think they used a cheaper chip or something to keep that price down. But when you load a really big course, it can take a few minutes to actually show up. So as you can see here, I've got my course loaded up, and you can see my map. It's me over here, and that's where I want to be over here. So as you can see here, this isn't a full-blown map like what you get on the Fenix 6 or the 945. It's a basic breadcrumb trail map. So you basically just see a squiggly little line, and then you've got your waypoints and an arrow that indicates indicates where you are. To be fair though, this is still more powerful in navigation than any of the competition except for Garmin itself. So when it's compared to like Coros or Polar and any of those brands, you still get more navigation features on the Instinct Solar than you do on those watches. And that's because you can design your course within Garmin Connect using their awesome course builder. You can add waypoints to it, like for water sources or aid stations or any of that stuff. Now, when you're navigating a course, you can see that there's additional pages here. So for instance, here is my elevation profile for the course I'm on right now. You've got your estimated time elapsed, and you've also got your estimated time for arrival. So yeah, totally usable. Despite the fact that it doesn't have full mapping, it's still a very usable feature. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of the Garmin Instinct Solar, and that is the battery life and solar functionality. Is it worth it? In short, yes. This is not a gimmick. This is not like the Fenix 6 Solar Pro that I just looked at a couple weeks ago. That watch did work. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a functional feature of the Fenix 6 Solar. However, this takes it to the next level. This can actually charge up from a low battery state just by being out in the sunlight, which is really powerful, I think, for a lot of people. The battery life of the Instinct Solar without any sunlight involved is up to 24 days in smartwatch mode and up to 30 hours in GPS mode. 24 days, that's unheard of with a Garmin device. Now, if you sprinkle in just a little bit of sunlight, you can get up to 54 days in smartwatch mode or up to 38 hours in GPS mode. What's even more impressive about this is when you go into battery saver mode. When you click this little icon here, you can see right now I've got 8 days of battery life, but if I click that, now I've got 27 days of battery life. So in battery saver mode, the watch basically just gets dumbed down, right? All of the sensors get turned off, no heart rate, no compass, no altimeter, none of that stuff. It'll still track your steps, your stairs climbed, and all of those details, but no sensors are active. It also disconnects from your phone, so you don't get any text message alerts or anything like that. It just turns into a basic watch at that point. Now, some people might argue, why buy a smartwatch if you're just gonna use it as a regular watch? I could think of a few use cases for this, like if you're on an expedition or you're off the grid and you really value your battery life because you want to use the GPS during the day maybe, and you just want to sleep with it in battery saver mode so you can check what time it is without turning the watch off. Now get this, in battery saver mode, you get up to 56 days of battery life without any sunlight. Now if you sprinkle in just a little bit of sunlight, you get unlimited battery life. Seriously. The watch will never run out of battery as long as you get a little bit of sunlight. I did some testing with the Garmin Instinct Solar compared to the Garmin Fenix 6 Solar. I brought them both outside in super blaring hot sunlight. I put them on my deck facing up at the sun, and I left them both in battery saver mode for 1 hour just to see what happens. Now, unfortunately, one quirk of the Instinct Solar is it actually doesn't show a battery percentage. It only shows you how many days or hours you have left. I don't know why. So to compare, I'm just talking about days and hours here. Now, after 1 hour in blaring hot sunlight in the same position right next to each other, both in battery saver mode without touching them, the Garmin Instinct Solar gained 7 days of standby time. 7 days, just in 1 hour of charging on my deck. Now, the Garmin Fenix 6 Pro Solar didn't gain any time. It started with 41 days and it ended with 41 days, but the Instinct Solar gained 7 days on top of that. So yeah, the solar feature on the Instinct Solar is no joke. It's not a gimmick. I could see a lot of use out of it in different capacities and different use cases, so pretty cool. Let's take a closer look at some of the data I got from the Instinct Solar compared to my Fenix 6. So on this run, I had the Instinct Solar, the Garmin Fenix 6, in a Polar H9 chest strap. That's a Bluetooth chest strap that goes on my chest, obviously. That was paired to my phone. So I'm getting heart rate data from both the Instinct Solar, the Garmin Fenix 6, and the H9 chest strap all independently, so we can compare apples to apples here. First off, let's take a look at GPS data. The Garmin Instinct Solar is orange on the screen. The Fenix 6 is red, and that blue line is actually my phone's GPS because I was recording with my Polar H9 chest strap using the Polar Beat application, and that stores GPS data as well. So we're really comparing the orange line against the red line here. As you can see, the Instinct Solar seems to be collecting a better track than my Garmin Fenix 6. I'm not really surprised, especially here. You see all these squiggles on the Fenix 6 kind of going out and around and then crossing over itself. The Instinct, on the other hand, looks pretty linear. It's pretty straight. Yeah, here's where I did my little photo shoot for YouTube B-roll. Yeah, the Instinct is certainly not perfect, but it's better than the Fenix 6. Let's take a look at some of the other metrics here. Right here we have the altitude. So this is using the onboard altimeter on both watches, the Garmin Fenix 6 and the Instinct Solar. On top, you see the Fenix 6 Pro. On bottom, you see the Instinct Solar. You can see they're pretty close. I mean, what are we talking here? The Instinct Solar is reporting 2 meters below the Fenix 6, so that's within margin of error, I think, for these wrist-based devices. So pretty similar compared to the Fenix 6 in terms of altimeter. And lastly, let's take a look at the heart rate data on the Instinct Solar compared to the Fenix 6 and also compared to the Polar H9 chest strap. This is the Polar H9 chest strap. It's a really great strap. It's very comfortable and it collects really accurate data, and that's the most important factor here. So scrolling across right away, we see this huge deviation. So let's take a closer look at that. You can see here that the Garmin Instinct Solar kind of took a minute to catch up to the other two. I'm not sure why. The purple line you're seeing there is the Polar H9 chest strap, and that seems to be the most accurate. I came out of the gate a little hot and my heart rate went up. But yeah, the Instinct Solar kind of lagged behind for some reason, and I'm not really sure why. It's weird because these both have the exact same heart rate sensors, so why do I get different results? I don't know. I think it might be the weight of the device or how tight I was wearing it. I really snugged these things down when I put them on to try to get the best data, but who knows? So in this case, the Instinct Solar certainly started off pretty rough, but later on in the game, they catch up to each other and they're all pretty close. I mean, the wrist-based ones are still a little bit off. You can tell when I was doing these intervals, my heart rate would drop, and then when it spikes back up, you can see that the Polar H9 really captures that quickly, while the other two kind of lag behind. And that's just inherent with the wrist-based sensor. It's further away from your heart, so it's getting a delay in the data. So something I've noticed a lot of on Facebook and in the forums is people comparing the Instinct Solar to the Garmin Fenix 6, and it's a really unfair comparison. A lot of people have been considering the Instinct Solar to be like a Garmin Fenix Lite, and that's kind of the case, but it's really designed for an entirely different market. So let's talk about what's available on the Fenix 6 Pro compared to the Instinct Solar. The most obvious thing is the full mapping function on the Fenix 6 that isn't available on the Instinct Solar. Next up, you've got music on board the Fenix 6. You can have Amazon Music or Deezer or any of those services, Spotify. You can't do that on the Instinct Solar. You can only control the music that's available on your phone, not actually store it on the device. The Fenix 6 also has Wi-Fi for syncing without your phone, which is a minor detail, but it's something. The Fenix 6 has a much larger full color display compared to the monochrome, very small display of the Instinct Solar. The Fenix 6 offers longer GPS battery life without any solar function involved, just straight out of the box in the shade. You'll get 36 hours on the Fenix 6 Pro, where you only get 30 hours on the Instinct Solar, but it's a different story in standby time. That's where the Instinct still has the Fenix 6 beat. And then there's all of the training metrics that are available on the Fenix 6 that are not available on the Instinct Solar. Things like VO2 max, performance conditioning, training status, the race predictor, all of that stuff is available on the Fenix 6 that isn't available on the Instinct Solar, which is kind of strange because that stuff is available on some of the cheaper watches like the Forerunner 245, but again, I don't think they designed this for runners. And more recently, the sleep tracking widget that was available on the Fenix 6 that I made a video about a month ago, that's not available on the Instinct Solar. And finally, again, no Connect IQ support, so you can't add widgets or apps or data fields, none of that stuff. Basically, what's on the watch out of the box is what you get, unless they add it in a firmware update down the road. So yeah, the Instinct Solar is definitely not a Fenix 6 Lite. They're very similar. They're in the same demographic and market, but there are a lot of things missing on the Instinct Solar that are available on the Fenix 6. What I found interesting about the Instinct Solar is how similar the experience was to something like a Coros Apex or an Apex Pro like I have here. They're both very minimalistic and simple, and they've got a basic menu system. Everything's built in, you can't add to it. It's a very similar experience to something like a Coros device. All right, so who's the Garmin Instinct Solar for? I think this would be a great watch for hikers, adventurers, long distance trekkers. I can see this being a great tool for someone on an expedition or a really long alpine climb who wants access to an altimeter or a compass. That said, I think a lot of people in the trail and ultra running community and also road runners alike might like the simplicity of the Garmin Instinct Solar compared to some of the other Garmin watches. People who are looking at Coros devices in particular, people who like that minimalistic, just do it and get the job done kind of attitude, I think the Instinct Solar also has that base covered. And it's unique in that way because a lot of the other Garmin devices are really just filled with features that people don't use, and people complain about all these extra things they're paying for. In this case, you're getting exactly what you're paying for, which is $399. So it's not cheap, but it does do a lot of things and it does them well. So yeah, I really like the Garmin Instinct Solar. I think it's a really unique device in the Garmin lineup, and it ticks a lot of boxes for a lot of people. Anyways, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching this video. If you're thinking about picking up a Garmin Instinct Solar, check out the link down in the description. That is an affiliate link, so it'll help support my channel if you decide to buy one. It costs you nothing extra. You literally just buy it like you would anything else, and I get a little commission for you clicking my link, so I appreciate that. And if you thought this was a helpful video, I really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button down below and give me a thumbs up. It lets me know I'm still doing a good job, trying pretty hard here. All right, I think that's everything. I'll see you in the next one.